Okay, so I've come across a report. It was actually in the London Times I read this, but I wanted to follow up and find a bit more about this. And it is about exploitation in the workplace, a subject I feel very strongly about. And the Mexican restaurant chain Wahaca um, has been accused of an incident in which, because some customers did not pay, a waiter had to cover part of the cost of their meal out of his wages. That's an absolute disgrace. If you look at Wahaca's Facebook page, there's already been a backlash and a very little sympathy with them. I'm going to read out the report from the BBC. Well, actually, rather than reading it out, because there's two articles that I'll put a link to in this. One is from the BBC, one is from the Daily Telegraph, which is not exactly a lefty paper. So this is, we can't say these are biased sources. Um, the founder of Oaxaca, Thomasina Mears, apparently launched this as an ethical business project, as a supposedly having ethical standards. And the company has claimed this incident in which the waiter had to pay part of the bill is not standard industry practice. It's not their standard practice. But if that's true, why did it happen in the first place? I mean, what sort of misunderstanding would have had to happen for someone, that particular branch manager, to think it was a good idea that the response to customers not paying is to take it out of an innocent waiter's wages? I feel strongly about this because I have personally been through this. About 12 years ago, I worked in an Italian restaurant here in Sunderland, and the management basically one day decided to take away our tips. The logic being that tables hadn't been wiped properly. Now, this is unusual. If that had been the case, and I certainly tried my best as a waiter, I don't pretend I was the world's best waiter, but I tried my best. If that was the case, if in the UK tips are not mandatory, at least certainly not outside London, and the logic therefore would be, why would customers give tips if they weren't happy with the service? Surely the customer is the most important thing. So anyway, they docked tips. At the time, I was shocked. I couldn't understand, like, I was really taken aback by it. One day, someone, not even the manager themselves, they got an underling, they just say, "Oh, sorry, your tips have been taken away this week because tables weren't wiped properly." Not just me, other waiters as well. I remember the sense of frustration and powerlessness that came with that. I was only 17 at the time. I didn't know my legal rights. I didn't know any rights. And that's part of the problem here. A lot of waitering staff in this country are foreign nationals who do not know their legal rights. I think exploitation is rife in the catering industry. Um, so, how did this come to light? Well, apparently another diner, Sarah Hayward, who's a former Labour leader of Camden Council, Labour leader of Camden Council, saw what happened and she brought light to this by posting it on her Twitter account. I understand it's a pretty shitty thing to do, by the way, for someone to go to a restaurant and not pay. I do understand from their point of view that's frustrating, but they shouldn't put the onus on waiters to make up for the staff, to make up for the wages. Excuse me, to make up for the lost, the lost revenue from that. That is not the waiter's fault. They should have CCTV and maybe get the police, or bar the customers, or send a bill to their address or something like that. I'm sure there's other ways they can look at this without taking out of the waiter's salary. But this is something that caught my attention in the Daily Telegraph reports. Um, if you just bear with me, this, by the way, happened in the North London branch. They have 25 branches across the country. They claim that they're going to have an internal review and it isn't a standard business practice. But other former Wahaca staff soon came forward to claim that they too had been docked wages. Others claimed the practice was widespread across the food industry. That doesn't at all surprise me. Daniel Wheeler, 26, who worked at Wahaca's flagship branch Waterloo for 10 months in 2017, said managers warned him about the so-called dine and dash rule on his first day. He later claimed to have witnessed a barman being frog marched to a cash point to withdraw his own money after mistakenly accepting a fake £50 note. So for this mistake that the barman made, they took out the guy's money for that. That is pure exploitation. It's pure abuse of staff. Many of the workers come from abroad. This is by Mr. Wheeler, and don't understand their rights. I think Wahaca sometimes take advantage of that, he said. He also criticised Ms. Thomasina, who has championed fair trade produce at Wahaca, and last year praised her staff as bright sparks. It's all very well to tell the world that you love your staff and you want fair pay for all, but you've got to act that way behind the scenes, he told the Telegraph. So, this is a very depressing situation. If so-called ethical businesses are behaving this way, then what about the ones that don't put ethics at the heart of their business policy? I mean, I think it is rife across the industry, and I find it infuriating. Credit to Sarah Hayward for raising awareness of this. As for Oaxaca, I think the only reason that they're showing concern is because they've been exposed. This is very often the case. And it's just very sad that this has to happen. Waiters should not have to foot the bill for greedy customers who, dash and run. And that's wrong. I also blame the customers. That's a really shitty thing to do. I also blame them. But this is disgraceful, and it isn't just Oaxaca. This happens in other businesses as well. It's rife across the industry, and I think that businesses who do this deserve all the backlash they get. I remember, even 12 years on, the humiliation, the frustration I felt as a young man of just being powerless to do anything about it. I eventually quit because I just felt very uncomfortable in that working environment. Waiters, in particular, are really open to this sort of exploitation. I'm not saying every business is bad, but my goodness, if someone that champions ethical working practices does this, then it just makes you wonder just how bad other businesses are. So I'll put a link to the two reports. Usually I just read these things out, but actually, if cooking dinner at the moment, I don't want things to burn. But I'll put a full link to the reports, and yeah, I would say to people, think twice about dining at Oaxaca. This is how they treat their staff, and I don't really buy their excuse. Oh, this is not standard working practice. That counters what former staff members have said.